I'll ask one more question.
Sure.
On that, because you mentioned just earlier about how kind of you had to become angry with yourself to kind of overcome this, and there were times when you were certainly alluding to the fact that there are people with bad intentions, basically, who if you are a yes person, if you are someone who's always trying to please or gain acceptance, they'll manipulate that situation. And kind of along those lines, as a segue, you'd also spoken in the last episode about, as orphans, you would just, I think you used the term, everyone was groomed for some sort of abuse in some form or manner. And recently there's been a big, well, not big scandal, but a lot of things are coming out about what was happening in the 60s and 70s. You've got your Jimmy Savile was kind of the face of that. Rolf Harris is I think his case is still ongoing and stuff like that. I guess my question is, one, and I don't really want to go into too much about the details of what happened, because I don't think that's important personally, but feel free to share if you do. But more so in terms of the impact that has, and as someone that's now older, because you said like it was just rampant across the orphanage, and I know you spoke, I think it was Ray who committed suicide recently, and you kind of spoke of this despair amongst a lot of the orphans, even in their adult age. I know Gary Speed, the former Wales manager, there was some sort of suggestion that because of abuse that had happened to him a long time ago, he'd committed suicide, or that was the reason behind his suicide as well. I guess I kind of just want to know two things. One, for those listening who might have been abused in their life, kind of maybe tools to overcome the scars that it leaves, and I guess also just to hear and understand about what that means to somebody. I don't know if that makes sense.
It's a good question, and I can't fully answer it because I was very fortunate to be protected against actually being sexually abused. Having said that, I can tell you about the process of being groomed for that. I know because I was certainly groomed for it, and I can tell you about that, and that was actually quite interesting, particularly because the social worker that saved me from that, I met with her in Dublin a couple of years ago, and we sat talking about it, and I didn't even know, which was what was interesting about it. I didn't even realise what was happening, but and I can tell you what she said. I think at the kind of low end of it, Damien, there's a sense in which they're not necessarily, to taking your original point, they're not necessarily people with bad intentions, because I think there's a kind of polarity. So I think that the sexual predator absolutely has bad intentions. But actually, at the other end, it's just expedient. So I work in, for example, I don't know, I was originally in the sales environment. So that was when I got into work, I was in selling. And I'm the worst kind of person in the world to put into a sales environment, because it's an acceptance-based environment, right?
Yeah.
Good people are people that sell stuff.
Yeah.
Regardless of who they sell it to. Bad people don't sell stuff. And they glorify you, they send you on competitions, they send you around the world on airplanes, having going to fancy things and give you cups and trophies. And you get a chance to be someone. So this is a nightmare. The only thing that was ever worse than that for me was a charismatic church. Because that was the same kind of environment where this is just a disaster for someone like me. But the people that run those organisations, and I let me stay with the sales environment because that was altogether the point, is that if I'm managing people, right, and I've got two people that I'm working with, and one person's just desperate for me to accept them, then I can kind of put pressure on that person to work and stay late and do stuff, and they'll just keep taking it and taking it and taking it. Whereas somebody who's secure and knows who they are might push back. Well, I haven't got time for your pushback. I just need to get it done, right? So fill the place up with orphans, because that'll just work forever. And all I've got to do every now and again is go back and go, great. Come over to dinner tonight. And oh my God, exactly. And I can remember that. I can remember that to this day. When one day my boss in the insurance company came to me and said, "You've got to have you and your wife over for dinner." I was like, this is so cool. Because we were going to Cobham for dinner. Do you have any idea what that means? And it's so funny because I've taught at Cambridge and all over the place, and travelled and taught all over the world now. And it's so funny to me when I think about how these systems are designed to kind of leverage that kind of insecurity. And it might, interestingly, a pressure that I didn't have, that people like you have who come from good homes, is I didn't have the leverage of my parents needing me to be successful, because there's a whole nother lever that's pulled, you know. Then that wasn't the pressure that I had. But back to your bad intention point. So there was a guy that came to the orphanage that kind of latched onto me, and it was really interesting the way he did it, because I was really good at football, and we were in mainstream schools, obviously, but
you went to Bishop Stockford, was it?
No, I went to St Ignatius.
St Ignatius.
Yeah, Jesuit college.
Yeah.
And so I was in the, but the kids that went to the college, you know, we didn't have.
That was the boarding.
No, that was Blaisdon, which I managed to escape in Gloucester.
Well,
very well remembered. So the actual school I went to, when I got out of got off the hook for that Blaisdon school in Gloucestershire, was St Ignatius, which is in Enfield, the Jesuit college, fantastic school. But the point was that when we wanted to play football or something, in those days there were these. Our Ronaldo was a guy called George Best, who of course he was from your football team, and he used to have George Best had these football boots. They were sick. They were these black and purple boots. They were like the best things you've ever seen. Yeah. And the other big team was Leeds United, and Leeds United used to play in these white, and they had these numbers they had on their socks that were like everyone was in awe of them, and they had these great track suits and stuff. But of course we couldn't run to that. We used to get second-hand football boots with wooden studs, and for the footballs we played we were laced up and all that. It was ridiculous. So this guy who came to the home, he took a shine to me, and he used to come and watch me play football. So he would, one day he would arrive with a new pair of football boots, and then he would ask, can I take Paul to the game? And then he would take me to this game, and then he would introduce me to this other team. And then so I was now not just playing for the school, but I was playing for a local side, Lee Valley, who was the big side there. Yeah. And then I was introduced somewhere else, and so on and so forth. And every time he would be with me, and he would take me everywhere. And it would be one week it would be boots, the next week it would be a new track suit, then it would be, and I wasn't really conscious of this, but now I think an arm round me, and you're great, and you're not like these other boys, and over a period of time, you kind of just come under the spell of this guy. Yeah. So I was in Dublin, and I was having lunch with this lady called Jo Bannon, who's a beautiful, beautiful woman, and she was one of my carers, and she said, "Oh, do you remember the time?" And she named this particular guy, and I went, "Yeah. Oh, he was great." She goes, "No, I had to go to the Crusader Rescue about him, and nearly lost my job over it." And I said, "Why?" She said, "Because I watched you as a young, athletic, virile boy over a period of time become more and more and more effeminate in his presence, and I was so disturbed about what was happening to you that I called the conference with the nuns. They didn't want to know anything about it because they said, no, he's from the Knights of St. Columba, he's a good guy. He's a good guy and all the rest of it. And then she took it, she escalated it, and then in the end she threatened to have him prosecuted because she was so worried about it. And then they kind of took him, he kind of disappeared. But it was interesting because it was a bit like, and I think this would be what I'd be saying to young people, children, particularly children that have real rejection issues. It's a bit like boiling a frog. If he would have just physically touched me, if he said, "Hello, I'm so and so," and then
you would have left.
I'd have freaked out. But he didn't do that. He just slowly socialised me over this thing, and I know from some of the other children that I know who were abused, it was, you'll do anything. We have such a deep-seated need to belong, Damini, that when you don't belong to anyone, you'll be prepared to belong to anyone. And I saw it in some of the other boys, that they would be, it'd be a touch and it'd be a stroke and the rest of it. And we had, I can think of some of the boys that were raped by women staff. I can think of some of the children that were sexually assaulted by nuns. It's just like unbelievable. But we were just like shooting crab in a barrel.
Yeah.
We were just there to be taken.